If there's one holy grail in the world of technology and design,
Well,
one word that just sits on a golden pedestal above all others, it's frictionless.
oh, absolutely. It's the highest compliment you can possibly pay a designer. It's the North Star for every product manager in Silicon Valley.
Right.
If you can remove a click, you get a promotion. It's that simple.
Yeah, we want our apps to be seamless. We want one-click ordering. We want the video to start before we even finish making the popcorn. We want intuitive, fast, smooth.
Mm-hmm.
In the modern lexicon of tech, friction is the enemy. Friction is bad design. Friction is failure.
That is absolutely the prevailing wisdom. It's what we're taught in design school and business school. But
Okay.
what if I told you that a perfectly designed user experience, one that is completely frictionless, might actually be a disaster waiting to happen?
I'd say you're trying to ruin my seamless one-click pizza ordering experience. But seriously, that's the paradox we're digging into today.
It is.
We're looking at a stack of research that suggests there is a very thin and, frankly, a very dangerous line between helpful usability and harmful manipulation.
It's the tension between usability, making things easy, and ethics, which is about preserving your autonomy. Because here's the core truth we really need to grapple with. When you remove all the friction, you also remove the moment of choice.
And that's exactly what we're unpacking in this deep dive. We're not talking about bad design, like a button that doesn't work or a confusing menu where you can't find the settings.
No, not at all.
We're talking about design that is working too well. Optimized design that steers us toward commercial goals, often at the expense of our mental health or even our financial safety.
And to do this, we're pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources. We have academic studies on streaming platforms from the University of Chicago, some deep dives into the concept of dark patterns, critiques of fintech apps like Robinhood from Brown Computer Science.
And some internal industry reports, right?
Yeah, and some really revealing internal industry reports on something called value-sensitive design.
So buckle up. We are about to add a little bit of necessary friction to your understanding of the digital world.
Let's dive in.
Okay, let's start with a concept that I think explains why we're in this mess to begin with. The sources call it the engagement trap,
Mm-hmm.
and it relies on this critical distinction between what they call little e and big E.
This comes from the research on behavior and ethics, and it's a brilliant way to diagnose where things go wrong in product development. It sounds simple, but the implications are huge.
Okay, so break it down. Little e.
So little e stands for engagement with the product feature itself. Taps, scrolls, time spent, daily logins.
Right, the stuff the analytic dashboard loves. The stuff you put in a quarterly report to show growth.
Exactly. It's the mechanical interaction. But big E is engagement with the real-world outcome the user actually wants.
Give me a concrete example of how those two diverge, because in theory, shouldn't using the app more help me get what I want?
In a perfect world, yes, it should. But let's take a meditation app.
Okay.
The user's goal, the big E, is to reduce anxiety, maybe sleep better, find some peace. That's why they downloaded it. They want the outcome, not the tool.
Right, they want to feel better. Simple as that.
But the app's metrics, the little e, are daily logins and maintaining streaks. So you have a user who is stressed out of their mind because they almost broke their 100-day streak.
Oh, I have absolutely been there. I know that feeling.
So they log in for 30 seconds, they tap a button just to keep the badge alive, but they aren't actually meditating, they aren't getting the benefit.
I'm stressing about the app that's supposed to de-stress me.
Precisely.
I'm servicing the app's need for retention rather than the app servicing my need for calm.
And from the company's perspective, the app has succeeded at little e. You logged in, the retention numbers look great to the investors, but it has completely failed at big E. You are not any calmer.
In fact, I'm more anxious.
You're more anxious. The design succeeded for the business metrics, but failed the human need.
And this leads us straight to what the sources call the tyranny of metrics, because companies become obsessed with measuring the wrong things.
They call them vanity metrics, and the classic one is DAU, daily active users.
The gold standard.
It is the gold standard for Silicon Valley success. If you're a startup, you live and you die by your DAU. But one of the sources points out that a high DAU count can hide massive frustration.
How so? I mean, if I'm using an app every day, surely that means I like it, right?
Not necessarily. Think about it. If I log into an app every single day because I'm trying to find the cancel subscription button and I just cannot find it and I'm clicking around angrily, guess what I am?
Your daily active user.
I'm a loyal, engaged user, according to the data.
That is wild. So the metric is completely blind to the the quality or
The sentiment.
the sentiment of the experience. It just sees activity.
One's to intent. One source notes that the word active is incredibly vague. In some systems, just receiving a push notification and swiping it away counts as activity.
Jeez.
Oh, yeah. Or clicking a like button on a third-party site that's integrated. You might not have opened the actual app in weeks, but the report says you're active.
It feels like such tunnel vision.
That's exactly what it is. And the sources talk about the danger of the one metric that matters, the OMTM.
Right.
If a design team is told your only job is to increase time spent on app by 10%, they will inevitably design for addiction, not for utility. They stop asking, is this helpful? And they start asking, is this sticky?
And there's this other concept mentioned about the zero-click consumer. It sounds like a title for a mystery novel, but it seems to be driving this desperation for metrics.
It's a shift in behavior that's really scaring marketers and product designers. People are seeing content, maybe an ad or a product recommendation on a platform, and they aren't clicking.
Yep.
They consume the information and then they go search for it on a different device, or they buy it in a store later.
So the traditional tracking the click-through rate is broken.
Yeah.
You can't draw that straight line from the ad to the purchase anymore.
Exactly. The attribution model is broken. And because the designers can't prove their value through clicks anymore, they get pushed toward more aggressive tactics to force engagement. If you won't click voluntarily, they'll design the interface so you have to click. They need to manufacture that little e-engagement to prove they're doing their jobs.
Which brings us to the dark side. Literally, let's talk about dark patterns.
Or deceptive designs, as some researchers prefer to call them. And it's really important to clarify here, these aren't accidents.
Right.
These are not just bad designs made by someone who didn't know better. These are carefully crafted user interface choices designed specifically to trick you into doing something you didn't mean to do.
The sources list a few that are just diabolical. The first one is the Roach Motel.
A classic, easy to check in, impossible to check out.
Right.
The most common example is the subscription service. You can sign up online in 3 seconds with one click. But if you want to cancel...
Oh, here we go.
You have to call a phone number between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. EST, sit on hold, or maybe even print out a form and mail it to a P.O. box.
I feel my blood pressure rising just hearing that. It exploits the fact that the friction of making a phone call is just so much higher than the pain of paying like $9.99 a month.
It's an asymmetry of effort. That's the key. They remove all the friction from the buy button, and they pile all the friction they can find onto the buy button.
Okay, what's next? Sneak into basket.
Yeah, this happens all the time in e-commerce. You're buying a plane ticket, you get to the checkout, and suddenly the price is higher than you thought. Why?
Because they added something.
Because the site automatically added travel insurance or a priority boarding fee into your cart without you ever clicking on it.
And you have to actively find the tiny, sometimes hidden checkbox to remove it.
It relies on you rushing through the process, assuming that the site is, a neutral party. But the site isn't neutral. It's trying to upsell you by stealth.
And my personal favorite, well, my least favorite, is confirm shaming.
Ugh, this is just pure psychological manipulation. It's when the option to decline an offer is worded to make you feel stupid or guilty.
Like when a site offers you a discount for your email and the no button says, "No thanks, I hate saving money."
Or, "No thanks, I prefer to be uninformed."
Right.
Exactly. It's weaponizing shame to get a click. It's petty, but it works because we're social creatures who care about how we're perceived, even by a computer screen.
It creates this tiny moment of emotional friction that you solve by just clicking yes to make it go away.
But there's another pattern that's much more subtle and honestly much more pervasive. Forced continuity.
The free trial trap.
The free trial trap. You sign up for a 7-day trial. You enter your credit card info just for verification, of course.
Of course.
And then the trial ends and you're instantly charged for a full year. No warning email, no, hey, do you want to continue? Just a silent charge.
I think everyone listening has fallen for that at least once. It relies on us forgetting.
It does.
But let's zoom in on a specific case study that the University of Chicago did. It's about Netflix and autoplay.
This study is fascinating because autoplay is so normalized, we don't even think of it as a dark pattern. We just think of it as a convenience.
Sure. It just plays the next one for me.
But the researchers classify it as an attention capture damaging pattern, an ACDP.
That sounds serious. An attention capture damaging pattern?
It is. Think about the mechanism. Autoplay removes the stopping cue. In the old days of TV, a show ended, the credits rolled, the screen went black or to a commercial.
Right.
That was a natural cue to ask yourself, Do I want to watch another one? Is it time for bed? Am I hungry? You had a moment to think.
You had to make a conscious choice to continue. You had to pick up the remote and press a button.
Autoplay inverts that default. Now, the default is continue. You have to expend energy to stop.
Ah,
It exploits what psychologists call cognitive inertia, our tendency to just go with the flow because doing something requires effort. The path of least resistance is to just sit there and let the next episode start.
so what did the data say? When they turned autoplay off, what actually happened?
When autoplay was disabled, participants watched an average of 18 minutes less per session.
18 minutes. That doesn't sound like a huge amount.
Per session. Think about that. If you watch Netflix, say, 4 times a week, that's over an hour of your life reclaimed every single week.
Oh, wow.
Over a year. That is days of your life. But here is the really interesting number from the study. The 24-second gap.
What's that?
When autoplay was off, there was a 24-second delay between episodes. That tiny little bit of friction restored user agency.
Just 24 seconds.
Just 24 seconds. It gave people just enough time to realize, actually, I have work to do. Or, you know what, I'm tired. That 24 seconds is the difference between a conscious choice and a zombie binge.
That is profound. We think of friction as an annoyance, but in this case, friction is consciousness.
Friction is the brakes on the car. Imagine driving a car that only had an accelerator. It would be very seamless right up until you crashed. The friction allows you to steer.
That's a perfect segue, actually, because if Netflix crashing just means you stay up too late, well, that's one thing. But when we move into fintech financial technology, removing the brakes can be life-destroying.
This is where we need to talk about Robinhood. The research from Brown and the behavioral nudges papers do a deep dive into the gamification of trading.
Robinhood exploded in popularity because it was frictionless. Commission-free, easy to use, looked great. It was supposed to democratize finance.
It did, but it looked too good. It didn't look like a financial brokerage. It looked like a mobile game.
Right.
And the sources highlight specifically the use of confetti.
Right, I remember this. When you made a trade, digital confetti would rain down on the screen.
Think about the psychology of that. You just bought a stock. That is a financial risk. You've put capital on the line. It's a serious decision.
It should be.
Confetti provides a dopamine hit or reward mechanism borrowed directly from slot machines and casual gaming. It trivializes the action. It masks the gravity of the risk. It says, yay, you played, not you have just invested capital.
And what about the free stock promotions?
Presented as a scratch-off lottery ticket. You literally rub the screen to see what stock you won. It triggers the exact same psychological pathways as gambling.
So it conditions the user.
It conditions the user to view the market as a game of chance rather than a place for long-term rational strategy.
And the tragedy here, and it really is a tragedy, is the story of Alexander Kearns.
It is a heartbreaking case, but it's essential to understand the real-world cost of frictionless design. Alexander was 20 years old. He was using Robinhood to trade options.
Which is a very complex, high-risk thing to do.
Extremely. And he opened the app one day and saw a negative cash balance of $730,000 in bright red.
I can't even imagine the panic. He's 20 years old.
He committed suicide. And in his note, he asked, how is a 20-year-old with no income able to get assigned almost $1 million worth of leverage?
Was he actually in that much debt? Was it real?
That's the worst part. Likely, no. The source explains that the interface was showing a temporary balance while the options trade settled. It wasn't the final number.
So it wasn't a real debt.
But the interface prioritized a clean design over clarity. There was no educational friction, no pop-up explaining, hey, don't panic, this is a temporary settlement number, here's what it means.
So the frictionless design removed the context he needed to understand what was happening. It was efficient, but it was dangerously vague.
Exactly. The source notes that while the interface is user-friendly, it lacks comprehensive investor education. The speed of the tool outpaced the user's understanding of the tool.
It's like giving a Ferrari to someone who's only ever ridden a tricycle.
And taking the brakes off. One-click trading is efficient, yes. But for a novice investor, that cooling off period, the friction of having to confirm or call a broker, that was a safety feature.
Right.
It stopped impulsive decisions. It forced you to actually articulate what you were doing and why.
This connects back to what we said earlier. Friction creates space for thinking. When you remove it from finance, you remove the thinking.
And you replace it with impulse. And when you combine impulse with leverage, you have a recipe for disaster. The design actively discouraged the slow thinking required for financial safety.
I want to shift gears to something that affects almost everyone, not just traders. The algorithm. We talked about Netflix, but social media feeds are a whole different beast.
Yeah, the research on algorithmic entrapment is key here. We tend to think of our feeds as just stuff our friends posted, but they are not neutral backdrops. They are curated, ever-learning feeds.
And they're learning about us.
They are. And there's a term for this, hyper-nudging. It's not just a generic nudge like, eat your vegetables. It's micro-personalized targeting that exploits your specific vulnerabilities.
How does that work?
If the algorithm knows you engage with content when you are angry, it will show you things that make you angry. If it knows you scroll longer when you see idealized body images, it will flood your feed with that.
And this leads to something called time exploitation.
That's a concept from one of the sources on fairness. The algorithms are optimized to maximize dwell time. They are literally designed to mine your time. And to do that, they use the slot machine mechanic.
The pull to refresh.
Think about the action. You drag your finger down, the little wheel spins, and you wait to see what you get. Sometimes it's a boring post. Sometimes it's a funny meme. Sometimes it's shocking news.
In psychology, that's a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement, right?
Correct. B.F. Skinner discovered this with pigeons. It is the single most addictive form of reinforcement known. If you knew exactly what you were going to get, if you got a food pellet every time you picked the button, you'd get bored.
Sure.
But because you don't know, because the reward is unpredictable, you keep pulling the lever, you keep scrolling, you're chasing that dopamine hit.
And the impact on adolescents, as highlighted in the source material, is terrifying.
It's not just about time online. The research focuses on these exposure-response loops. So, if a teenager is vulnerable to body image issues, the algorithm detects that they pause on weight loss videos. Maybe they're looking at it out of insecurity. The algorithm doesn't care why.
It just sees the pause. It just sees the engagement.
It just sees the engagement. So to maximize that engagement, it serves them more weight loss videos.
It creates a feedback loop.
Exactly. The algorithm essentially automates a downward spiral. It's optimizing for engagement. It doesn't know that eating disorder content is bad. It just knows user spends time on this. That is where the ethics completely break down.
It's efficiently delivering harm because harm is engaging.
Precisely. And because it's frictionless, the user slides down that spiral without ever hitting a bump that might make them stop and reconsider.
There's no moment where the app says, hey, you've been looking at a lot of this stuff. Do you want to see something else?
Nothing like that.
This brings up the big question. Why?
Why do designers build this? Are they evil? Is there some villain in a dark room twirling a mustache? I think it's easy to villainize the designers, but the sources give us a much more nuanced view. It's usually a conflict between business and ethics.
The incentives are just completely misaligned.
Completely. The business incentives are revenue, speed, and scale. One source talks about reckless speed. Decisions are rushed to get it out the door. If you raise an ethical concern, if you say, hey, maybe we need to study the long-term impact of this, you're often seen as a blocker. You're slowing things down.
And there's that data is money mindset.
Right. Engineering students and junior designers are often trained or, pressured to believe that collecting all the data is just what you do. One study showed that students often resist ethical training because they view it as unrealistic in a corporate environment.
They think it's naive.
They think, my boss wants the data. If I don't build the feature to get the data, I'm not doing my job.
So it's hard to be the one person in the room raising your hand saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this, when everyone else has a bonus tied to that metric.
Oh, exactly. It takes immense courage. But there is hope. There's a concept from one of the papers called soft resistance.
I love this term, soft resistance. What does that look like in practice?
Since designers often lack executive power, they can't just say, no, we aren't building this to the CEO. They use these subtle tactics to introduce friction into the decision-making process itself.
Like what? What's an example?
So one example is changing the text in a prototype to make a harm feel real. Instead of using lorem ipsum placeholder text, a designer might write a realistic, scary notification to show stakeholders what it would actually feel like to the user.
Oh, that's smart. So instead of a generic box, they mock up a notification that says, your location is now being shared with 50 strangers.
Exactly. It forces the business people to confront the reality of what they're building. It takes it out of the abstract and makes it visceral. It makes the side effect undeniable.
That's clever. It's like a Trojan horse for ethics.
It is. Or just asking innocent questions in a meeting. So just for my notes, what happens if a stalker uses this feature to track their ex-partner? Do we have a safeguard for that?
You aren't saying this is bad.
You're just asking a question that forces the team to answer it, and often they can't.
So the UX professional becomes the only advocate for the user's long-term well-being in a room full of people advocating for the company's short-term profit.
That is the burden and the nobility of the role. They are often the last line of defense.
So we've laid out the problem. We're trapped in engagement loops, tricked by dark patterns, and our financial and mental health is being optimized for someone else's profit.
Mm.
What do we do? What are the solutions?
The sources point to a few paths forward. One is a framework called value-sensitive design, or VSD.
How does that work? Is it just like a checklist of things to do?
It's more of a philosophy. It's about moving ethics upstream. So instead of building the product and then asking, oh no, is this bad? You account for human values, privacy, autonomy, freedom from bias during the design process from the very beginning.
There's a technique mentioned here called the pre-mortem. I've heard of post-mortem, obviously.
Yes, a post-mortem is what you do after a project fails to figure out why. A pre-mortem is a workshop where you pretend the product has already failed or caused tremendous harm.
Okay.
You get the team in a room and say, okay, everyone, it's 2 years from now, and this app has ruined people's lives and is on the front page of the news. How did it happen?
That's brilliant. You work backward from the disaster to prevent it. It forces you to be cynical about your own creation.
It really does. And they use tools like envisioning cards. These are prompt cards that help teams look around corners for unintended consequences. A card might ask, what if this feature is used by a bad actor? Or how does this impact someone with a gambling addiction?
Or what happens if this is used by a child?
Exactly. It effectively operationalizes empathy. It stops you from designing only for the happy path, because the happy path is rare.
So we also need structural changes. We need mindful friction.
The return of the brakes? We need to reintroduce stopping cues. Removing autoplay is the obvious one, but one of the sources proposes engagement caps.
Like a hard stop.
It could be. Imagine if TikTok or Instagram said, you've been scrolling for 60 minutes, you cannot scroll anymore for the next hour. Or at least a very strong nudge.
TikTok actually started doing something like this for younger users, right? A time limit.
They have, and it's a start. It's about shifting from those little E metrics to well-being metrics.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means measuring success not by time spent, but by competence. Did the user learn the language on the language app? Did they save the money? Did they leave the app feeling better than when they entered?
That requires a massive shift in business models, though. I mean, if you sell ads, you need time spent.
It does, and that's why we can't ignore the regulators.
No, the Wild West era is clearly ending.
The EU Digital Services Act is pushing for safety by design. They're looking at these dark patterns and saying, this isn't just clever design, it's consumer fraud. If you manipulate a user into spending money they didn't intend to spend, that is a legal issue, not a design choice.
It feels like we're at a turning point. We've spent the last decade obsessed with making everything seamless, and now we're finally realizing that the seams were there for a reason.
We're realizing that friction is actually a tool for autonomy. It's the pause that allows you to be human rather than just a user.
So, to synthesize all of this, we started with the allure of the frictionless interface. It feels good, it's fast, but we've learned that friction is essentially the brakes on our digital car. And without brakes, you are not driving, you are being driven.
That is the core takeaway. If you are not making conscious choices, someone else or some algorithm is making them for you.
I want to leave our listener with a thought from the sources that really stuck with me, the concept of ethical debt.
This is a powerful idea. In coding, there's technical debt. If you write messy code to move fast, you eventually have to go back and fix it, or the whole system breaks.
Right. It accumulates interest, it gets worse over time.
Ethical debt is the same thing, but with human behavior. If a company grows by exploiting user psychology, by tricking people, by addicting them, they are accumulating ethical debt.
And eventually that bill comes due.
It comes due in lost trust, it comes due in regulation, it comes due in societal harm that rebounds on the company. You cannot exploit your user base forever. Eventually they wake up, eventually the friction comes back whether you want it to or not.
So for you listening right now, next time you're in an app and you feel that pull, the urge to pull to refresh, or the video that starts playing automatically, or the button that makes you feel guilty for clicking, no. Just pause.
Ask yourself, is this product serving my goal, my big E? Or am I just serving its metric, its little e?
Add a little friction to your own life. Take that 24 seconds.
Reclaim your agency.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.